Good morning. It's May 26th. This is To My Liberal Friends. Today we celebrate Memorial Day. As a veteran, this has a special meaning to me. It's a day that we set aside to honor and commemorate those that have made the ultimate sacrifice in defending the freedoms that all too many of us take for granted. Over the course of our history, more than 1 million service members have made that sacrifice. This commemoration began on June 3, 1861, when the recently dug grave of John Quincy Marr, a captain of Virginia militia, and his first combat battalion in the Civil War, was decorated in Warrenton, Virginia. Marr had been killed 2 days earlier at the Battle of Fairfax Courthouse. The practice of decorating the graves of their honored war dead would soon sweep both North and South. Although many had claimed to be the first to observe Decoration Day, the National Cemetery Administration, a division of the Department of Veteran Affairs, credits Mary Ann Williams with the idea of decorating the graves of soldiers with flowers. Almost 100 years later, the nation finally realized this day was being celebrated in most states, and Memorial Day became a federal holiday in 1971. That was the year I entered the Army, so it sticks in my mind. Since the Civil War, the United States has been involved in multiple conflicts. There are arguments to be made that we either stumbled into World War I or were managed into it. Our involvement in World War II was a direct result of Franklin D. Roosevelt's understanding that the threat that Hitler's Third Reich was to the world. Despite the neutrality movement and a strong Bund position of German nationals in Middle America, Roosevelt started the Lend-Lease program, and his aggressive trade embargo against Japan forced the Japanese to respond, and the United States was a full partner of the Allies after December 7, 1941. It was the right thing to do. The Korean War and the Vietnam War were entirely different conflicts, and the latter was my generation's war. In both cases, we seemed determined not to win for some political reasons, and the result was thousands of lives were lost on the peninsula of Korea and the fields of Vietnam. Today, as I look back on the soldiers that have served so valiantly, some making the ultimate sacrifice and others being able to come home, I would hope that everyone would remember them. When I mentioned that I was in the military, all too often people gratuitously say something like, "Thank you for your service." But I think all veterans wonder if they really mean it, or is something they've just been trained to say. For me, I'll remember men like Clifford Haynes. Cliff and I went to high school together and were good friends. After graduation, I went off to college and Cliff joined the Marines. Eventually, he was deployed to Vietnam with D Company, 1st Battalion of the 5th Marines. On May 26, 1969, he made that ultimate sacrifice in the province of Quang Nam. He will always be remembered by his family and his friends from the Pittsburgh area. I will also remember another high school classmate from Chartiers Valley Senior High School. Thomas Jester graduated with Cliff Haynes and I in 1967 and entered the U.S. Army. He also made that ultimate sacrifice in our nation on September 21st, 1968, in the province of Long An. I knew both of these brave men throughout high school. They were patriots, and at the time in our history, serving the military was not just something you did, it was an honor and something you felt obligated to do. I will also remember my uncle. Colin Haddo was born in Scotland in 1908 and immigrated to this country with my grandparents, Duncan and Christina Haddo. When World War II broke out, he was already in his mid-30s, but he never hesitated and enlisted in the Army. He was with the original unit known as Merrill's Marauders, who marched through the jungles of Burma. They were a unit that specialized in long-range penetration of enemy lines, trying to thwart the Japanese. Each man in this unit had to volunteer, and he was willing to endure the harsh conditions and terrain they had to traverse. They employed hit-and-run tactics and caused significant disruption of Japanese supply and communication lines. This was a very special unit. Of the original 2,700 men in the 5307th, only 200 of them remained fit for duty. In total, 272 were killed in action, 955 were wounded, and 980 of them had to be evacuated. My Uncle Colin was one of them that survived and left those jungles intact. He never really spoke much about what he endured during the war. He came home and went to work as a shipping clerk. He was a bachelor all his life, but never forgot his nieces and nephews. My own father, also a veteran, died when I was 4 years old, leaving behind a widow and 5 young children. My Uncle Colin was there to help, just as he was in combat, and never shirked his duty. My final remembrance today is for a dear friend, William Bill Hanson. Bill's in his 80s now, but he served for 28 years in the Army. He entered as a private and retired as a colonel. He was a true warrior with multiple awards for courage and bravery. When we both lived in Virginia, Bill would speak at the Vietnam Memorial every single Memorial Day. When he retired to Utah, his home state, he was honored along with 9 other warriors for his service and his actions. It was at that ceremony that his wife, Diane, first heard some of the actions Bill took in combat, and she was at first angry and then proud. I would hope that everyone listening to this today would think back on those that were their friends and those in their families that have served our nation honorably. When you say that phrase, thank you for your service, think about it, and think about the sacrifices they made to protect our freedoms. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening and happy Memorial Day.